When my daughter-in-law told me I was no longer family, I did not cry. I smiled. Not because it did not hurt, but because I did not want her to see how deeply her words had entered my heart. I remember that moment very clearly. We were standing in the kitchen. The house was quiet, too quiet for a place that once felt full of life. The smell of tea was still in the air. The cups were on the table. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt the same after that sentence. "You should understand," she said calmly. "Things change after marriage." I nodded slowly. I told her I understood, but inside, something broke very softly. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my own breathing, wondering when I stopped belonging in the family I helped build. I am not a perfect mother. I never was, but I gave my whole life to raising my son. I raised him alone after his father passed away. He was only 6 years old then, too young to understand why his father never came home again. From that day on, it was just the two of us. A small rented house, a small income, but a very big love. Every morning I woke up before sunrise. I packed his school lunch. I ironed his uniform carefully, even when my hands were tired. I worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with tears I never showed him. At night, I sat beside his bed. I listened to his stories. I helped with homework even when I was exhausted. I told myself one thing again and again. One day he will grow up. One day he will be happy, and that will be enough for me. I never imagined that one day happiness would mean losing my place in his life. When my son told me he wanted to get married, I was happy, truly happy. I cooked his favorite meal that day. I prayed for his future. I asked God to give him a good partner. When I met her for the first time, she was polite, quiet, respectful. She smiled softly. She spoke gently. She did not say much. I thought to myself, she seems like a good girl. I welcomed her into my home. I tried to make her comfortable. I gave her space. I gave her respect. I did not interfere. I did not ask many questions. I believed that love grows best when it is not controlled. After the wedding, they moved into the same house with me. It felt natural. This was the home my son grew up in. At first, things were fine. We ate together. We talked politely. We smiled. But slowly, very slowly, something began to change. Conversations became shorter. Silences became longer. My son stopped sitting with me in the evenings. He stayed in his room more. His phone was always in his hand. When I spoke, sometimes he did not hear me, or maybe he heard me and chose not to respond. I told myself it was normal. New marriage, new responsibilities. I kept reminding my heart to stay patient. Small things started to hurt. If I cooked, she did not eat much. If I suggested something, she smiled but did not listen. I noticed she rearranged the house, moved things I had kept in the same place for years. One day, I could not find my old photo frame, the one with my son as a child. When I asked about it, she said gently, "I put it away. It makes the room look old." I laughed softly, but inside, I felt like a memory had been erased. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. I started eating alone sometimes. I kept my voice low. I stayed in my room more. I told myself I should not complain. This was my son's life now. A mother must know when to step back, I thought. But no one tells you how painful stepping back can be. One evening, my son came home late. I had kept dinner warm. He said he was tired. He went straight to his room. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, looking at the food, listening to the silence. That was the first time I felt truly invisible. I did not know then that this was only the beginning, that the hardest words were still waiting to be spoken, that soon I would be told, not through shouting, not through anger, but through calm words, that I was no longer family. After that evening, I began to notice things more clearly, not because they suddenly appeared, but because I could no longer ignore them. The house felt different in the mornings, quieter, colder. I used to wake up early and make breakfast for all of us. Now they often ate in their room, or they ate outside. When I asked gently, "Did you eat?" my son would say, "Yes, we did." His voice was polite, but distant. I told myself not to read too much into it. Young couples need privacy, I thought. I remembered how life changes after marriage. Still, my heart felt heavy. I started choosing my words carefully. I did not want to say the wrong thing. I did not want to upset anyone. If something needed fixing in the house, I waited. If I had a suggestion, I kept it to myself. I began to feel like I was walking quietly inside my own life. One afternoon, I overheard them talking in the other room. Not shouting, just calm voices. My name came up. "She worries too much," my daughter-in-law said. "She should let us live our own way." My son did not argue. He stayed silent. That silence hurt more than words. I went into my room and sat on the bed. I folded my hands in my lap. I stared at the wall. I asked myself a simple question. When did caring become a problem? Days passed like this, slowly, quietly. I stopped asking questions. I stopped waiting at the door when my son came home. I told myself, this is maturity. This is letting go. But deep down, I felt something slipping away. One evening, my daughter-in-law asked to talk. Her voice was calm, almost careful. We sat at the dining table, the same table where I once helped my son with homework. She folded her hands and looked at me kindly. "You know I respect you," she said, "but things are different now." I nodded. "This house," she continued, "needs to feel like our space." I listened quietly. "It would be better if you didn't interfere," she said softly, "even small things." Her words were not harsh. That was the hardest part. I smiled and said, "Of course, I understand." But when I stood up, my legs felt weak. That night, I could not sleep. I thought about my younger self, about all the years I spent raising my son. I remembered the nights he was sick, the days I skipped meals so he could eat well. I wondered if I had done too much, if love, when given fully, eventually becomes invisible. The next weeks were even quieter. They planned things without telling me. Outings, visits. Sometimes I found out later, sometimes not at all. Once they went to a family gathering on her side. I heard about it from a neighbor. That night I sat alone at home. The lights were off. The clock ticked loudly. I told myself I was being sensitive, but the loneliness felt real. One day, I accidentally heard my daughter-in-law talking on the phone. "She still acts like this is her house," she said. "But after marriage, parents need to step aside." I stood frozen, not moving, not breathing. I did not hear the rest. That sentence stayed with me all day. It repeated in my mind again and again. I began to shrink inside myself. I stopped decorating the house for small occasions. I stopped cooking special meals. I ate simple food. I kept my room tidy. I stayed out of the way. I thought, if I become small enough, maybe I will not be a problem. One afternoon, my son asked me gently, "Are you okay? You've been quiet." I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to ask him if I still mattered. But instead, I smiled and said, "I'm fine, just tired." He nodded and went back to his room. That was the moment I realized something painful. Even love can grow distant when silence replaces honesty. I did not know then that soon silence would turn into words, words spoken calmly, words that would draw a clear line, a line between who belonged and who did not. The day everything changed did not begin with anger. It began like any other day. The sun came through the window softly. The house was quiet. I made tea for myself and sat at the table. I remember thinking how peaceful it looked, how strange it was that peace could feel so heavy. Later that afternoon, my daughter-in-law came home early. She placed her bag down carefully. She looked calm. "Can we talk for a minute?" she asked. Her voice was gentle. That gentleness made my heart tighten. We sat in the living room. The curtains were half open. Dust floated in the light. My son was not home. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, "about our living situation." I nodded slowly. I already felt something coming. "This is our marriage," she continued, "our future. We need our own space, our own decisions." I listened without interrupting. "You're a good mother," she said. "I really mean that." Her words sounded practiced, careful. "But after marriage," she said, "a wife becomes the primary family." My hands rested quietly in my lap. She looked at me and said the sentence that still echoes in my mind. "You are no longer immediate family now." The room felt very still. I did not feel anger. I did not raise my voice. I felt something colder, like the air had left my body. I smiled softly, not because I agreed, but because I did not want to embarrass her. "I understand," I said. She seemed relieved. "It's better this way," she added, "for everyone." I nodded again. When she left the room, I stayed where I was. I did not cry right away. I looked around the house, the walls, the furniture. Everything had a memory. My son's childhood marks on the wall, the corner where he used to study, the kitchen where I cooked his favorite meals. I felt like I was slowly fading out of a picture I once stood at the center of. That evening, my son came home. He sat across from me. He looked tired. "She talked to you today," he said. "Yes," I replied quietly. He avoided my eyes. "She didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "She just wants peace." I wanted to ask him something. I wanted to ask, what about my peace? What about my place? But the words stayed inside. "I understand," I said again. That sentence had become my shield. That night I cried silently, not loudly, not dramatically. I cried the way tired people cry, with no strength left. I cried for the woman I used to be, the mother who believed love was permanent. I cried for the future I imagined, growing old with my son nearby, sharing small moments. That future felt very far away now. In the following days, things changed quickly. They began discussing moving out, or maybe me moving out. No one said it directly, but it was understood. I packed my things slowly, carefully. Every item felt heavy. Old clothes, old letters, old memories. I folded my son's childhood blanket. I held it for a moment longer than needed. On the day I left, the house was quiet. My daughter-in-law helped me carry a bag. She smiled politely. My son stood near the door. "Take care," he said. I nodded. "I will," I replied. I did not hug him. I was afraid if I did, I would not be able to let go. As I stepped outside, I looked back once. The door closed gently behind me. No one slammed it. No one shouted. That was the hardest part. Some endings happen quietly, without noise, without blame. They hurt just the same. If you like my story and want next part, then like the video and comment next part. If you love this type of stories, then subscribe to this channel, Heartfelt Stories, and stay tuned for more videos.